and welcome to this month's Open Metadata Community Meetup. It's great to be here in April 2026, showing you the latest in Open Metadata and how we are seeing people leverage data to improve their AI workflows and systems. It's going to be a great meetup this month. We have a lot to share with you all. Wanted to, before we jump into it, just provide some links on where you can find the Open Metadata community. We're out there on a lot of different platforms. If you could join us on GitHub, where you'll see us building out Open Metadata, or Open Metadata Slack as well. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and take a look at Collate as well. So our agenda today is pretty full. I'm really looking forward to this meetup. We have a summit preview for you. So our next event is going to be really special, going to be our yearly summit. Wanted to walk through some of the things that you can expect from the Collate Summit that is coming up here in June. We have a community spotlight with the Fire Department of New York, who has been building out their Open Metadata implementation in some really interesting ways. We're going to be showcasing how and why they've been leveraging Open Metadata. We have Pere from Collate here that's going to be talking about some new developments and how to leverage. We've been talking about Open Metadata Standards in the previous meetups. Now we're going to see an application of those standards and how you can leverage both Open Metadata Standards in L and AI to build something new. As always, we'll wrap up this community meetup with a metrics readout, give you some information on the health of the Open Metadata community, and get into all of your questions. So Collate Summit is coming soon. Collate Summit, we will be showcasing the latest in Open Metadata and building with data in AI in production. This will be June 10th, and it'll be a free and virtual event. You can get more information on Collate Summit at getcollate.io/summit 2026. And we are seeing a lot of different perspectives from the Open Metadata community that we'll be sharing in the summit. And I wanted to preview some of those today, but we have a great lineup already prepared, still putting the final pieces on that lineup, but I'm really excited for you to see some of the perspectives and some of the ways that we're seeing people build with Open Metadata and leverage those to improve their data and AI systems in production. At the summit, we'll have Bonnie from OpenAI. She'll provide a peek inside OpenAI's in-house data agent. Really looking forward to Bonnie's presentation at the summit. And then we'll have Angelita. She is a data engineering manager at Scout24, where she is leading teams that are building and operating large-scale data platforms. And she will share a practical perspective on building and scaling data platforms, organizing data teams, and supporting evolving data and AI use cases within modern organizations like Scout24. And Amy Forrest is a software engineer at Yelp who is driving a better data UX within the core data platform group at Yelp. And her work sits at the intersection of data discovery, metadata, and responsibly applying AI to Yelp's data, where trust and correctness is critical. So she'll be sharing how Yelp has customized their Open Metadata instance at our summit. They've extended Open Metadata connectors. They're implementing new statistics on top of Open Metadata. They have a certification process that they've implemented, a custom search algorithm optimizations, and also leverage AI to enrich assets with LLMs. So in this summit, we're hoping to provide a deeper understanding of how Open Metadata is used by these organizations, OpenAI, Scout24, and Yelp, and many others, for intelligent, automated capabilities that are transforming data management. And it's going to be a pleasure to see Bonnie, Angelita, and Amy present here, but we have a lot more to share from the community, and you can get more information on the summit, which will again be June 10th at the link that I just put in the chat here. So thank you everyone for that. That'll be June 10th. Looking forward to seeing you all there and sharing these great stories of how people are building with Open Metadata for their data and AI systems in production. But with that, I wanted to hand it over to the Fire Department of New York, where we'll see how they are using Open Metadata as well.
Thanks, Nick. Let me just start the screen sharing. Hopefully you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so Nick, thank you for having me. My name is Wes Fang. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Fire Department and at our IT department. I oversee a lot of the AI and data efforts here. Before joining the fire department, real quick background, I mostly was a developer. I worked at Sloan Kettering for 10 years, mostly working on Java and Oracle databases. And since then, I've kind of moved into more of a management and leadership role here at the fire department. I've been here for 10 years. And my portfolio mainly focuses on our electronic health records database and amongst a lot of other things. But really, the last 2 years, it's been an accelerated phase of onboarding new tools, new skills, new talent with a strategic focus on adoption of AI and deployment of various AI technologies. So, real quick information about the fire department. I'm sure all of you uh, who are within the tri-state area know what we do. We're the second largest fire department in the world, the biggest in the nation, and we really work with great people. I mean, everything that we do here is really truly the best, and I'm happy to really just kind of be part of this whole agency. Um, a bit more background about our IT department. So we have about, I'd say, 60 or so full-time employees that are split between application developers, database developers, business, QA, etc. And we have probably hundreds of vendors that we work with. And then specifically, I think the ones that my team focuses on is healthcare, set of healthcare suites. So when fire and EMS employees, they show up at an incident, right? There's definitely a lot of times they go into um, very kind of dangerous situations that sometimes they come out and they get injured, they take medical leave, they take light duty, and we have our own custom built EHR system that tracks, similar to the military, their duty status, whether or not they're fit for duty, they could be stationed on the truck. And ultimately, all of that information affects our agency's response time for incidents, right? So it's a very important system that we maintain. And we also have a lot of integrations with various vendors that does diagnostic testing against our members, all their data that comes back. We have connectivity to all of those. Um, it's almost like a small development shop here at the fire department. I have the pleasure of working with really smart, talented uh, people, also with our vendors as well. Our main tech stack is a Oracle database. We also have Postgres, MySQL, but really our agency institutional databases in Oracle. Um, and a lot of our traditional uh, technologies we use to build our applications I've listed here as well. And the past 5 or 6 years, we spent a lot of time on doing more automation. So making sure that, going from requirements to all the way to a deliverable, we can, uh, version control of our code, making sure everything is compliant and scanned with our IT sec. And all of that, I think, was precipice led us to this point where we can kind of continue to do uh, our AI initiatives using the same exact fundamental process that we've developed here in the last couple of years. Some of our core applications is what's called CAD. It's our computer aided dispatch system. It's really central to the 911 system. That's one of our biggest systems that we have in conjunction with PD. And a couple of other applications. It's an incident command application. When the fire department, the fire trucks arrive at a scene, it used to be a kind of a whiteboard that the chiefs would kind of coordinate allocation of assignments, what units to go into where, right? But this entire thing has been developed as a mobile application now. And then, of course, the main application I oversee, which is our electronic health record system. Um, so over the years, one of I think the biggest challenges for us was that we are really good at building applications. And where we run into a lot of friction and pain points is when it comes to operational analytics. So we have historically gone through a lot of exercises with, if our analytics department needs information, we would have meetings and come up with data dictionaries, come up with some sort of data catalog. But all of that essentially was done in Excel, right? There would be a spreadsheet that we would share amongst those participants, the subject matter experts. And then we would kind of go in and have these various team members to do documentation against that data set. But over time, somebody would have a copy of that data set, make their own changes, or it gets lost. We have staff that goes to another agency, which happens quite often. And then that turnover, naturally, right, there's information that gets lost. So that has been really a big kind of pain point for us, because every time we go through this exercise again, we would have to start all over again, right? So, and then there's, this kind of institutional knowledge that is kind of siloed into certain teams and individuals, and it's really difficult to really try to get their time and participate in this a process where we can kind of make this as a living document. So this became even more apparent when I think 2 years ago we started this path of trying to figure out how do we actually deploy a couple of generative AI pilots and demonstrate that this is something that is a very important technology that the agency needs to start looking at. We were very successful with those pilots, and one of them notably is a text to SQL pilot. So this is probably started about a year and a half ago, where we thought about, well, these LLMs are great at doing text generation, language translation. How do we actually see if we can make this a little bit more technical, where we have a lot of key users of our system? Typically, they would have to ask our development team to produce analytics, right? And there's always a turnover time, right? There's always a lead time to say, hey, well, we need these data sets and we need to do this analysis. Now let's get it over to our database developers, our data engineers. There's a whole cycle that goes on that typically takes, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, the fastest, right, before that data set is complete, and then hand it off to those stakeholders for them to do additional analysis on. So we said, well, can we actually use these LLMs to help us shorten that time, right? Can we actually say, if we given an interface through natural language, can they actually interrogate the database? And we were very successful with that. Again, that time we still use spreadsheets, right, to kind of document the data dictionary. We realized that once we created the semantic layer on top of our data schema, we would use that as the context for the LM. It understands it, and then it can generate SQL statements against our database, which would answer some of those questions. Now, the problem was that we did this on a small scale, and once the leaderships, they all saw the value of this, they wanted to, essentially have the solution available for our entire agency database. Our database, Oracle, right, it's been around for probably 30 years at this point. So there's a lot of information in this agency database. And we knew that in order for us to scale this out, we have to look at how do we retool, reskill, upskill, and kind of figure out a way to make this more of a rinse and repeat process. So we got started last quarter of last year, and we started to evaluate these kind of platforms where we can shift away from Excel, right, and get onto some tooling where we can have a collaborative platform for various SMEs, data engineers, data analysts, all participate in making all this data kind of a living documentation. So we evaluated a couple of these tools, and after about 2 months of trying various things out, we stumbled upon OpenMetadata. Funny enough, this was actually something that we asked ChatGPT for at the time, and OpenMetadata was one of them that it listed. And we said, okay, let's give it a shot. Let's see what this is about, right? So after looking at it for about 2 to 3 weeks, we quickly realized the value of um, why this tool could fit for us, right? What would be good for us. I mean, one is that it was really quick, and a lot of credit to the Open Metadata team to get onto social media, right, and start learning about this tool. So the YouTube videos were really good for us to kind of get started with. The documentation is great. A lot of these LLMs are pre-trained, right, as we all know, so that we can actually dive into the details about how certain functionalities work. Just because the information is not proprietary, right? It exists, and you can go in and start asking about how certain things work. The active ecosystem. So I definitely participate, and my team members have participated on the Slack channels to kind of get quick answers about certain functionality. So that's very helpful, right? We don't have to go through support, all of these other proprietary tools and have all these ticketing systems, right? Like that was always kind of a barrier to entry. And we understand that, in the long run, when things get more mature, there could be commercial support, right? So that's always good to have as well. But I think getting started for us really is that we can also deploy this on premise, right? That was a big also ask for our leadership as well. Some of this data has sensitivity associated with it, even though it's metadata. The fact that we can actually spin up a Kubernetes environment and quickly get this working, I think was also a big plus. So I think we're 5 months into this, and I want to talk a little bit more about, what was the next step. Once we decided to go with open metadata, we realized that this is one tool as part of a tool chain, and we have to develop processes associated with this new way of documenting information, right? So what I've listed here is a set of tools that we identified and installed and deployed. So part of this is that we knew in order to document information, we want to see if AI can help us with the documentation as well, right? So traditionally, again, the documentation existed in Confluence, in Word documents, but none of it was, what we were looking for. Something was off, we realized. And one of the things that we realized that we need to kind of lower that um, entry of making the information computable against the for the LLMs is that we want this information to be in markdown format. So one of our really smart engineers, um, you know, identified that, hey, maybe let's try Obsidian, which is a really popular tool. And then within there, you can uh, actually do documentation, workflow charts, everything through Mermaid. It also has a big community, and OpenCode is a plugin that we can wire in, so you can have essentially a co-pilot kind of experience within Obsidian to help with the documentation, right? Review it. All of that is connected to an agent that is kind of self-improving. On the hostess side, once we completed this documentation in Markdown, we can use that information to then further enrich the information as schema objects in open metadata. Um, and then, a couple of other tools that we have started to explore, which is the AI gateways. So we can actually switch between different LLMs to see how they differ in terms of accuracy. Um, and then real quick, I'm not going to kind of bore everybody on some of the conceptual stuff, but, the key point is that we realize that, with tooling, we have to also come up with the process, right? Where we have our subject matter experts and then giving them a set of tools where they understand that if they use these tools effectively, it can help them with documenting the underlying schema objects, the logic, a lot of the algorithms, and then it is easy to use. It's not something that is, a CLI or a VS Code or Toad, which is very common in the Oracle development community, right? It's a tool that they can go in and immediately start contributing, right? So we drew up some processes on how we think that um, it fits within our environment. This is going to be different for everybody, but this is kind of how we kind of figured it out. And then from that conceptual workflow, we actually started to say, okay, we're let's try this out, right? Let's get a business analyst, let's get developers involved in this, give them accounts and open metadata, and have them kind of go walk through this entire workflow. So what does this entail? Basically, as with all software development life cycles, with you start off with meetings with our stakeholders, right? You capture the requirements, and every one of these steps we're trying to kind of figure out, how do we actually automate, how do we actually make this simpler, right? So with transcripts now, right, we can pipe that into a documentation repository. This documentation repository is actually also hooked up to our open code agent, which then can help with templatizing the requirements. And then once the transcripts are in that repository and the business analyst wants to, or the product manager, right, wants to go ahead and create those requirements for the development team, they can go open up Obsidian, write out all the requirements using the open code agent to draft a template. And once that becomes available, developers goes ahead and builds out the actual enhancements. They those objects are then published. Imagine that these are tables or new columns, right? In the database, the metadata, open metadata database agent goes ahead and synchronizes that on a nightly basis. Then a team will log in the next day. They will see that, hey, there are changes in their objects that they own, goes ahead and makes those updates, right? That becomes this living process where information is kept up to date. So we've actually done this, and we're continuing to kind of scale this out with more team members participating in this process. Now, once this is all done, okay, now where's the ROI, right? Like, this is where we want to get to. Is I'm going to kind of briefly show. Let's see. Yeah, so this is Obsidian, and within here, right? Well, this is a typically business documentation. What I'm showing here is some what you would imagine as information about context about certain functionalities, certain business workflows, right? And this has the Mermaid plugin. We've got open code on the side, and what also is we found through this process and using this tool, which is good, is that business analysts, they're not developers, they don't work with VS Code, they don't work with GitHub directly. And what open code can do is that you can kind of just use natural language to work with GitHub commands, right? Ultimately, all this documentation gets committed into GitHub, and that's where the then an agent takes over, vectorizes it, and keeps that knowledge up to date so that it can cyclically help with further documentation. And here I'm showing an example where on the side you can see I am asking about whether or not there are changes locally, right? So if I make a change here, I could come in here and I could say, hey, can you check for changes? Yeah, there are changes, push them into the repo. Okay, now that it's in the repo, it also, there's a GitHub action that kicks off that updates the actual knowledge base or the vector database behind us, so that the agent, next time you ask it for helping with reviewing the documentation, it can give you that information. Now, how does this tie together with open metadata? You can see that once the developers move the objects into the database, right, next day those objects become available. Imagine that this is all blank, right? I have a view here, and this object represents the medical leave, the light duty status of the fire department, all the fire EMS, active fire EMS, right? And what they would do is they would come in here and they would use open code to say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about the duty status data set, right? Because of all the transcripts, the documentation that already exists in this repo, it would give me this description, and I can go and then move that into this object, right? That's an open metadata. So the same you can imagine for all the columns, right? It has awareness of all of these columns because they're captured in the requirements, right? So for each one of them, I can go back to the Open Code agent and then ask it to help me with documentation for each of these columns as well, right? So that's kind of like the how we're kind of using these tools together to help with enriching the data set. So once this is done, right, we hand this off to our end users, right? Our end users being the analytics department. And what they could do is now wire this up to Claude. I have the session here where this is an actual session that we used where this is connected to the open metadata MCP, right? This is all configured. Sorry about that. And now imagine that I'm acting as the role of the analytics department and one of the users that wants to put together a dashboard for executive or operational reporting. They can come in here and say, hey, tell me about data sets you have access to related to medical leave, right? Within open metadata, it goes ahead, makes those queries against the MCP agent and that knowledge graph. It comes back with information that I'm looking for. It has awareness of all the views. We've actually started to work on more of the security part as well. But the idea here is that a individual who might not know all the data set, doesn't know SQL, they can still come in here and explore these data sets to kind of put together something that they can deliver to operations and executives, right? So again, this is just kind of a session that just demonstrates that through natural language, I can kind of explore these data sets. This specifically looks at back in, I think, the end of January, New York City got a hit with a big snowstorm, right? So when that happened, there were upticks of people calling out, and we wanted to kind of investigate, like, what's going on there, right? Are they calling out for what's called service or non-service connected duty, right, statuses? So this is part of this exploration, right? Can we actually put together some analytics that would give us insight into what's happening with the uptick of people calling out? So with this, ultimately, um, what we got to is, okay, we've identified this data set, and very lazily I said, go ahead and can you plot this for me, right? Give me a visualization for this. And let me see if I could just, yeah. So this is the what Claude did, right, with connections to that open metadata schema information. It goes ahead and creates this beautiful kind of graph and visualization for me, right? This is split by EMS and fire, you can see. And I really didn't have to do much, right? Once we've provided all the context, it really can just kind of go ahead and do this on its own. You can see the uptick. Really, it's around when this big snowstorm happened, right? And yeah, this is what we're working towards, is empowering our business users with the ability to build out these dashboards with very little technical knowledge, right? I think the main thing is as long as they have understanding of the business, right, they can go ahead and really get a lot of this done without developer intervention. Now, developers, their job's not going away. What they're going to be focused on is facilitating building out these data sets, right? I think even further concentration on that, as opposed to using these analytical reporting tools, right? I think that's historically what we use, a lot of the Oracle technology to do business intelligence and all of that, a lot of proprietary coding that goes into it. Slight digression, we want to move away from that. We want to focus more on enriching the data. And then once that's done, in terms of how to build these interfaces, I think we see a future where we can use the LLM to do all of this. Part of this data set also contains some prediction data that we have that's running on an H100 cluster. So all of that comes through as MCP agents that we can connect to Claude with, right? And the more of these developer kind of, the more of these agents that we connect to Claude, the more it has access to all the various data sets that we have in our system. And we've got this all automated, right? So that's just, this is the export from Claude you saw. Here is actually a deployed version of this that contains data up to today. And this is, we're using it. And this data set, what we figured out is once a power user can go ahead and use Claude to kind of generate these dashboards, one further step is to download this code, move it into GitHub, right? And we're kind of figuring out how to even simplify that, where they don't even need potentially a GitHub interface. But the idea is once you just download this code, you log into GitHub, you upload that code, right? The whole kind of SecDevOps pipeline takes over, deploys all of this, and immediately becomes available. Yeah, I think this is the main thing I wanted to show everybody. But again, really thank you all for the entire Open Metadata team. Really, I think we got through a lot of these steps of configuration and kind of starting to use all of this because all the work that you guys have been doing for it. So we really appreciate that as well. And Nick, thank you for giving me the platform to showcase a little bit about what we're doing here at the fire department.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to hear, and I'm glad that you found us. And shout out to ChatGPT, and thanks for all of this great work in presenting it. I'm really grateful to the entire open metadata community, but the fire department of New York in particular has a really fond place in my heart. Since my childhood, right? You all have been an inspiration and heroes, for many of us. So thank you for all of your work, and to see open metadata be a part of that. Just really grateful. So thanks for sharing. Thank you, everyone, for all of your great questions. To that, we'll be getting to some of those questions here at the end of our presentation, but wanted to keep going with Pere here at Collate, where we will be able to show more of these workflows, right? We're seeing people leverage open metadata in various systems together with AI and seeing how these tools can all work together. And I think Pere has a great example of another way that you can extend open metadata's functionality with a little bit of AI. So Pere, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Wes, for the presentation. I think that it's always super cool to see how all of these different pieces like open metadata as part of giving this context together with the AI agents, helping non-technical people to actually dig and build on all of these things. It's, I don't know, I think that we are living very exciting times. And I think that this idea also of empowering users to expand and have this AI give us the necessary tools and automations to keep building and keep creating kind of marries quite well with the presentation that we have here at hand, because on the past few meetups we have been discussing about we have these open metadata standards, everything is built on top of this standard, this is super cool, this is super important. So today I actually wanted to take the chance to dig a bit deeper into how this standard is implemented, even where you can find it, and how we can even exploit it to keep expanding and keep building on top of open metadata itself. And we'll just give you a little example on how I was just able to create a new connector completely hands-off, just prompting, testing, giving the tracebacks back to Cloud Code, and how in the end everything kind of was nicely integrated together. And in order to do so, let's just start with a bit of the backstory here, right? Because in the past few years, both data and the data landscape complexity kept growing and growing and growing, not just from the transactional tables, but how this data is moving to data warehouses, using ETL tools into your dashboarding systems that then are also presenting the insights from ML models. And we keep adding new ingredients into, let's see, a bit this little madness that we have in the data landscape now with AI agents, the MCPs, the LLM providers, and whatnot, right? And that's basically what we have been pioneering with open metadata in the past few years is, okay, how can we make sense of all of this scattered information? And that's actually a very complex task because metadata is everywhere, but every tool defines it differently. Every tool shows it or makes it available in a different way. So making sense of, in order to make sense of all of this information, what we have done is, okay, let's sit down, let's just start from first principles, and let's design and implement an open source metadata standard, which basically will let us effectively translate and curate every little unit of your data platform, regardless of which system they come from. In the end, if I'm talking about a table, I don't care if this table comes from Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, Snowflake. It's a table. It should have a name. It should have some columns. It might have constraints. It might be related to other tables in any other shape or form, right? So we just need to make sure that we can gather all of these ingredients. We can translate these sources into the Open Metadata Standard, and by keep building and integrating and relating all of this information together, our result is a unified metadata graph that helps you cover your entire stack and that empowers then yourself and your team with the ability to discover, to govern your data, to make sense of the lineage, to implement the data quality, to build your data observability standards, right? So open metadata is this implementation, this API and schema-first implementation of this standard that helps us continuously integrate new and new and new sources to make sure that we can cover the full data ecosystem. Now, if we now take a bit of a lens and dig deeper into the shape of this standard, we have developed it using JSON schemas. And one of the biggest benefits that it has is first, that it lets us define the necessary properties of each of the entities. So I was just saying, no, tables should have a name, or in this case, a user should have a name, it should have an ID, it should have an email, it might belong to a different team, it might own certain pieces, right? So it helps us define all of these properties, as well as the necessary restrictions or formats that each of these properties need to follow, both at a human and machine readable format. And what is super interesting here is how we can actually use these JSON schemas to define the shape of the entity. So if you, at any point in time, want to go into our GitHub, we have this open metadata spec directory where you can find the shape that we have put to tables, to databases, to pipelines, to topics, to database services, to the actual shape of how do I connect to MySQL or Snowflake. So we're putting together all of these basic ingredients in there. But the most interesting part here is that we can also define the relationships between these pieces. So here I just extracted a little piece of our table JSON schema, and I can see that in the end, when I'm talking about tables, I should talk about schemas. I should talk about databases. I should talk about services, because in the end, if we just take this example of our tables, I would have a database schema that contains my tables. And then my tables will have certain data quality tests associated with them. And then I will have a user or a team that owns these tables, that owns these tests. So in the end, this standard helps us cover not only how each asset behaves individually, but actually what role it plays in the bigger scheme of things. Basically, it's just building up and defining this knowledge graph that in the end helps us, again, empower the discovery, the lineage, the governance, the observability, and whatnot. So we have these JSON schemas. This is our single source of truth. And what I find kind of super cool and super useful about this standard is that it's not just documentation. It's the single source of truth. And this is literally driving the entire platform, because I have one JSON schema that will be cascading through different layers. I'm going to automatically, from these schemas, generate Java code, Python code, JavaScript code for the UI. It will encode the data that we're storing into the database. It will help me build all of the necessary documentation about our APIs and whatnot. And this is thanks to JSON schemas having excellent support, letting us remove a lot of this boilerplating of generating this code. And what it's even more important here, it drives how we are defining all of these elements so that the backend APIs, the data, the UI, the ingestion framework, everything that we're building keeps properly aligned without drifting. So the same way that I can treat the shape of a table into my backend, I know that the shape is going to be the same when it's referenced in the UI, when it's ingested via the Python code. And this is our next step here on how I can even take this JSON schema and automatically, like if you've been playing with OpenMetadata already, I'm sure that your first step was I have to connect something so we can even create these forms for the connection, absolutely everything driven by the JSON schemas and the standard. And this brings me to our ingestion framework, right? So when we're talking about the ingestion framework, we're talking about the core piece, this Python package, this Python module that will interact with external systems. Okay, you can think of it as the translation layer in a sense between the external world and open metadata. And it's actually one of the most important, one of the core pieces of the entire platform, since absolutely every company journey will start here by bridging their data platform into open metadata by leveraging this ingestion framework that it knows how to connect to your sources, how to process this data internally, and then send it to open metadata using the APIs. And this framework takes care not only of the, let's call it the metadata journey, but it's also the foundation of our profiling capabilities that we have built in-house, that we have also been defining with these JSON schemas, of our lineage, automated extraction, of our usage, of our data quality agents, of our auto-classification agents. Absolutely everything is driven and defined by the ingestion framework here. Now, if we keep building layers of interesting things, one of the pieces that I love about being able to build this ingestion framework on top of this standard is that, okay, I have a set of rules, right? I know that for my ingestion to work properly, there's certain conditions that I need to follow. Again, it doesn't matter if I'm ingesting MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, or Snowflake. There is a set of rules that need to be there. I won't be able to ingest my tables until my database schemas are there, since they have this internal relationship. And I won't be able to ingest my databases until these schemas are there for the exact same reason. So there's a hierarchy that we need to follow. And the beauty of this is that these standards and relationships are the same for every table, for every schema, for every database, regardless of the origin. So we have built the ingestion framework in a way that helps us really translate and curate every different little system that we want, which means that once we have our connectors defined, once we have our pieces part and integrated of the ingestion framework, we can take care of, let's call it the complicated parts, right? The not so much business-centric parts of how do I treat Postgres data. I don't care about that. The Postgres connector will take care of it. Now I can just really take that little Lego piece, put it together with my broader framework so that open metadata can take care of how the user will connect, it will fill the form, it will deploy the ingestions, it will automate and schedule all of this process, how it's going to connect to the source system, how it's going to send back this information to the user. So all of this boilerplating, all of this logic on how each and every connector fits inside the system, it's managed by this bigger framework. So if I need to go and say, okay, I actually want to add a new connector because now I'm playing with a super new cool database that's been out in the market and I want to be able to discover it, to govern it, to manage it within open metadata, it's super easy to go and add this new connector by leveraging our ingestion framework. And let's take the next step of saying, okay, now I have this standard that defines every unit of the platform. I know that each connector needs to follow this standard. And this connector fits very nicely inside my ingestion framework. So there's all of this set of rules, all of this set of patterns that coding agents can help us in just automating a big chunk of the work. I don't need to start from scratch. I don't need to kind of bang my head against the wall trying to make sense of all of this framework or the internal pieces on what best practices or how the scheduling is actually fitting in the system. I can just let the AI systems, Cloud Code, Cursor, whatever it is that you're using, manage the bulk of the work in there. So what I'm going to show you now is a bit the different steps that I took here in order to create a new connector. In this case, we were missing a connector for Quest DB. I was just literally surfing around trying to figure out what might be interesting to add. And this Quest DB is kind of an open source database that helps us with time series analysis. So looked quite cool, right? So I spun up this Quest DB directly in Docker. I have it now running in my system. I created a few tables. There's some data in these tables, like nothing crazy. I'm just really trying to make sense and join all of these different pieces. But I have already my database going in here. And actually, if I want to start building on this, now that I have my database up and available in my system, I don't even need to start from scratch. Because one of the things that we also have is a scaffolding ability. So we were talking how I have this scheme, I have this structure. So I can even help the agent even more by leveraging this structure just directly boilerplating all of these initial files. So here I just called our metadata CLI to scaffold the connector, just passing brief information. Like, hey, I'm talking about a database. I know that this database is going to be based about SQL Alchemy connector. This is the scheme that it's going to use, the kind of authentication. So I can also let Plot figure this out for me, but in this case, since it was rather simple, I just went ahead and called the CLI myself also so that you could see all of the different steps, all of these different helpers that we have been providing that you can leverage. And once I had this scaffold there, I just started the conversation with my best friend Cloud Code, and I say, hey, just use these scaffolding files and build the Quest DB connector for me. And as you can see, it's the first thing that it said, I'm going to load the connector standard skills, because something that we have built together with the ingestion framework is saying, okay, there's a lot of lessons learned that we gathered in the past few years of building and improving every little piece and corner and edge case about the ingestion framework. So we have been coding down and documenting all of our standards, templating, examples, everything that the AI can leverage in order to actually go here and start helping us build a connector, from how we can manage the actual connection object for SQL Alchemy pieces, on good practices on how we can load metadata or how we can access the source systems, dividing with between anti-patterns, correct approaches, how can we make sure that the performance is going to be up to the bar of what we need. So in this case, it's leveraging on one hand all of the lessons learned properly encoded and defined in these different skills about how do we build a connector, how do we define the standards, even how do we review that the connector that we have built actually properly follows all of these little things and pieces. And the end result of that was me just playing around. As you can see, I also hit some walls along the process. Like I was trying to test the connection, something was not working properly. I literally just copy paste the message to Cloud Code, let it figure it out. And the final result was a nicely shaped PR with some of the changed files here that are defining how the connection object is going to be looking like. It even helps me defining the tests, which I think that it's brilliant, being able to automate some of these pieces. And how am I going to test the connection? How am I defining the connection, the actual connection object that we're going to use in here. So I literally did not write a single line of code. I let Cloud Code kind of figure it out, our good, best practices from these skills, together with everything that we have been building and encoding and managing on top of this Open Metadata Standard. And here you can see a bit the result. I have my Quest DB service. I can go, I can test the connection. This is going to go then send this information to Airflow, give me thumbs up. I can go back to the agents, play a bit with the metadata, make sure that I have all of the necessary information, and I was able to ingest these 4 tables that I just created for my sample. And before finishing here, if you want to have some fun and build that lovely connector that you would like to see as part of the Open Metadata, just some tips and tricks. First of all, please do check the docs, because actually we built something quite cool together with these skills. We have docs on how you can actually develop a new connector. It's going to guide you on how you can manage these skills, how you can actually set up this AI-assisted development. So we really want to make it as easy as possible, as simple as possible for everyone to share the joy of collaborating and building and contributing with Open Metadata. The second is understanding the architecture of the project is always going to help you if you can figure out the different pieces. Okay, so I have the server, I have the ingestion framework, I have Airflow that it's going to be managing all of these things. Will really organize all of these ideas. And then finally, you can also quickly iterate using the metadata CLI. So if you don't want to keep rebuilding Dockers, which sometimes gets a bit tiresome, just to try every little thing. Just remember that the same way that we have this metadata CLI to help us scaffold things, you can also run the CLI to help you ingest the metadata just by passing a simple YAML such as this one, and it's really going to help you just go super quick, copy paste the logs to Claude, let it continue to iterate until you have that nice and shiny connector on a PR that we can go and review for you. So yeah, that's everything that I wanted to show. Exciting times, all of this properly driven by our standards, by the lessons learned of the ingestion framework and fully encoded in these Claude skills. So thank you all, and Nick, back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to see, exciting and fast to see. So, oh, I have my wrong screen here. Let me share my slides. Exciting to see that, Pere. Thanks for showcasing that demo, and thanks for putting it together. We wanted to wrap up the community meetup this month with a readout of Open Metadata's health and growth since the last meetup, and it continues to grow well. So thank you all of the community for getting your support questions in and getting your code in. As you saw Pere present, we're making it easier than ever. Excuse me. We're making it easier than ever to add code to Open Metadata, and you can see some of those results. We've had over 400 PRs merged in the last 4 weeks. Great pace, as good as we've ever seen, and really excited about getting new connectors into Open Metadata, new skills into Open Metadata, and continuing to have new contributors into Open Metadata as well. A lot of questions, especially this past week on our Slack. You can find our Slack at slack.open-metadata.org. We'd be happy to have you all there. We're seeing a lot of people discuss how to leverage some of these cloud skills, how to leverage AI with Open Metadata there. And those support questions continue to be resolved. A lot of those resolutions are coming from new pull requests. So thank you all for getting your support questions in, helping guide the future of Open Metadata and make sure that it is as useful as possible to as many people as possible. So thank you all for your support questions there. Support, if you're new to Open Metadata or not in our Slack, support is just a Slack channel within our Open Metadata Slack where we helping people make sure that their open metadata environment is working as smoothly as possible. So thank you for all of your questions there. We have a number of new community contributors as well. So we had 14 community contributions by my count since our last meetup. Thank you so much, everyone, for getting that code in. And I think with some of those skills that Pere just showed, let's try to get this slide, doubled next meetup. I think that there's a lot of interesting things that we can build, a lot of things that people want to use open metadata with, and hopefully giving you some tools to be able to extend open metadata into new areas to be able to track new databases with that. One more thing that I wanted to showcase before we get to the Q&A is just a reminder on the Collate Summit that we'll be having June 10th. So we saw at the beginning of the presentation, Bonnie from OpenAI, Angelita from Scout24, and Amy from Yelp are going to be presenting. We have a lot of great guests. That's just 3. There's many more that'll be coming, but we'll also be sharing some perspectives from Collate and Open Metadata on the direction that Collate is going. Seeing a lot of requests within that Open Metadata Slack, some things that we're going to be addressing. Some of the most requested features we'll be tackling and presenting on June 10th, implementing them in some interesting ways. So just wanted to share that with you all one more time. And you can find more information at the summit at this link. The events link is getcollate.io/summit 2026. We'll be having speakers from Collate, including Collate CEO Suresh. We'll be having those guest speakers that we presented earlier. And then we have lots more to showcase for you on June 10th. We had a number of different questions come in. Happy to take those, continue to take those as well. We had some questions about sharing this presentation and being able to view, especially FDNY's great presentation. You'll be able, I provided some links to that. You'll be able to see those after our Zoom meeting here today. So thank you again, FDNY, for that amazing presentation. Definitely want to get your guys' hands on that. Saw a lot of requests for that come in. Let's see some of the other questions that we had here. One for FDNY, how has that user reception been for the new workflow? So how has that adoption been going for you all? And is it anything that you can report on as far as like time savings, cost savings, or any other particulars since these new implementations with open metadata?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, to start off with, we don't have a data management and data governance process. So this is completely new for us. And the current roadmap for us is we want to continue. So I've been doing this with my team, which is probably about 15 people. So part of their process every day now is to log into open metadata and keep track of your objects and continue to kind of ensure that there's no drift. The next phase, which I'm hoping to accomplish by the end of the summer, is department-wide adoption, right? So I think maybe another 20 or 30 individuals will participate in this process. And the hope is that with each data set that we complete the documentation for, and we have good ownership on this, is we reciprocate by having our stakeholders be a part of this life cycle, where not only do we give them this highly enriched data set, they immediately can start building out these analytics and dashboards. So the reception there is, they want to do this, right? Because this, again, for them is minimizing that time to delivery. And I think I've been mostly kind of involved in, getting this champion in this process. We do have metrics. I think maybe at towards the end of that phase, love to come on and give you guys an update, and I'll definitely share that with Nick, and you guys will see more of the KPIs and the metrics and so forth.
Wonderful. That would be excellent. And I know that we had a lot of great questions come in. So thank you all for your interest on what we've been able to present today, both on Collate's side and with the Fire Department of New York. You can find us on Slack, or we would love to have you back, you know, to report out those KPIs or anything else you're building. I know it's been a lot that you shared with Claude and with OpenCode and with Obsidian, as seeing all of those tools work so seamlessly together. Excited to see what you build next, and would definitely welcome you back. But with that, we're going to wrap up the meetup for this month. So a little programming note. As far as we know, like the current plan is to not have an open metadata meetup in May as we prepare for the Collate Summit in June. We typically have these at the end of the month, so want to kind of share those open metadata voices and perspectives and community spotlights, as well as sharing updates on the latest in open metadata. There's a lot coming that we're excited to share, but almost certainly will not be having one in May. So we would love to have you all again join us June 10th, where there's a lot for us to share at that Collate Summit. So looking forward to seeing you all again soon, whether it's at the summit or at another open metadata meetup. And thank you all for attending, and best of luck with your new connectors, building those out or having Claude do them for you. Take care, everyone. It was great to see you.
Awesome. Thank you all.